Welcome, challenger. Bring your silliest skills. Smash it! Conquer all 16 ludicrous trials.
Hello, everyone. It's Jamie from Upload here in the UploadVR studio, and I'm delighted to say that today I am joined by Sam Watts from Make Real. Say hello, Sam.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing?
So Sam, Make Real is a studio in Brighton in the UK, and it's a big week for you guys because you are releasing Loco Dojo Unleashed on the Oculus Quest. Tell us a bit about the game.
So the game is a madcap multiplayer mini-game social party sort of VR experience. You may be thinking of a very popular console sort of party title that we won't necessarily mention just to avoid any IP infringing lawsuits, but it involves 4 people standing around a meta game, which we can see here. They spin the dice wheel, which essentially moves their character around, and when they land, they typically land on one of 16 mini-games, or they may land on a square that allows them to apply a boost or a boon or like a forfeit token. And the idea is they win at the mini-games, they get victory coins. More coins means leveling up your headband. It's all based on sort of karate. And once you get to the black headband, you unlock the central temple here, and the Grand Sensei welcomes you to try and win that final game to become the overall winner. But that sounds, fairly mundane explanation. The thing is that the mini games are all slightly wacky in that you could be riding a pig, you could be using nunchucks made of sausages. You could be milking a pig, you could be driving a remote control pig, and there are other games that don't involve pigs, but you'll just have to play to find them out.
But there's the sausage one, there's the whale one you've got here.
Yeah.
If you're looking on the video right now and you can see the board, you get kind of like these are kind of like hints at what you'll be playing, which is all kind of crazy, kind of zany stuff. I love the board itself, and I always wondered for you, like obviously you're big into like board games and things like that. Was that some of the inspiration behind taking this approach to the game?
Yeah, very much so. But there's also an old traditional Japanese board game format, which is very much based around this moving around a map and carrying out actions depending upon which squares you land on. And that heavily influenced it, but also the other popular console party game concept of having a meta game that launches you into the mini games, and it's just it's a really nice tactile solidifying sort of environment that brings you all together in a positive way rather than when you're at each other's throats competitively within the mini games, as it were.
And then obviously this game first came to PC VR headsets like 2, maybe 3 years ago now. It was a while ago, wasn't it?
April 2017, yeah.
Oh, so like nearly, over 4 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
That is
obviously
mind-blowing.
Last year doesn't really count whenever you think back, but it's nearly 4 years ago. Or is it over 4 years ago? Actually, it is over 4 years ago. But we built it for touch. We worked with Oculus to do that, based around the sort of the touch launch window. But we always felt, that tether, the link from the Rift to the PC, didn't quite give us that full freedom, that full confidence to fully wave your hands around and take advantage of that freedom that Quest offers. So it was always our goal, once we knew that Quest was a thing, that ultimately its home should be on Quest, where now we see a much bigger marketplace, but also we can actually start adding more and bringing more to the game post-launch.
What were some of the things that you did add in this new version of the game? Because there are quite a lot of new features that are kind of quality of life things from the original, right?
Yeah, sure. So content-wise, it's it's pretty much the same. We have the same 16 mini games, and we still have what we call the table of trials, the main multiplayer tournament. We added what was called Solo Challenge fairly late towards launch on PC, just to make sure there wasn't an element of single player, but also like a tutorial. So we wanted to make sure that some of the biggest feedback we got was people wanted to be able to select which minigame they played on their own so they could hone their skills, rather than relying upon where they landed based upon the dice wheel. So the Solo Challenge became 10 Trials Test, and then we added Solo Dojo with the new table where you are just selecting which game you want to play to hone your skills and get better at it. So when you are ready for multiplayer, you're going in with black belt proficiency rather than being a complete noob. But then, just to make it more interesting, we've tiered those based upon the level of difficulty that we think each minigame is, and you have to score at least a bronze in each minigame in each tier to unlock the next tier. And then we launched originally on PC with 8 animal masks, so you can change the mask of your avatar. But it's based on the Chinese zodiac, and there's always 4 masks missing. So we wanted to take this opportunity to add those 4 masks, but also reward them to users who showed that level of competency and skills in the dojo, so that when they get at least 2 gold trophies in a tier, they'll unlock one of the masks. And then if they get all gold in a tier, they'll unlock one of the new masks. So when they go to multiplayer, you can see straight away that this person has been putting in the hours, been putting in the practice, and you've got a fearsome opponent against you.
Obviously, like moving from PC to Quest, that's quite a big jump in terms of like the graphical horsepower you're dealing with. What has that journey been like, porting the game? And how important was it for you guys to be on Quest? Because earlier, like you said, you've got this bigger market opportunity right now. Do you see this as kind of like a real launch or a 2.0 version launch of the game?
Yeah, it is kind of a 2.0 launch. We didn't want to just bring a straight port across. Although it would be optimized, we didn't just want to bring the same game over. We've had plenty of time to listen to people's feedback, but at the same time, we have to be realistic in terms of the budgets we have available currently, in terms of what we can achieve. So when it was greenlit and signed, when we were given, had the store slot confirmed, we then, had to optimize our budgets and our time and our development to make sure we were putting in enough new features, but at the same time enough polish of what we could achieve with we are a small dev team within that, to get to a level that we were happy with, what people we felt would be happy with, and we would then get to the point where we can go, right, here's our roadmap, here's our next 1.1, 1.2, etc. future updates. So there's many things we want to do and we need to do to sort of move forward post-launch. It's a multiplayer game. Oculus have recently introduced more multiplayer features and ways to party up and lobby together in the OS before you go into a game, so you want to incorporate those elements. They came in just at sort of the wrong time for us, just as we were getting ready for QA and trying to lock the build down to start introducing new services. It was just, it's not generally a good idea just before you go into QA. So these are all things we knew that we would do for that first post-launch patch, which will be coming very shortly after tomorrow. But in terms of the actual optimization, because we had that sort of seniority of the original team, everything was fairly optimized to start off with for PC. And bearing in mind 4 years ago when we were still aiming for the min spec of the PC at the time, to hit those frame rates, it doesn't look that different. There's a fair bit of geometry reduction under the hood, and we say the PC version is essentially polished wood. The Quest version comes out looking a bit more waxed wood, and but it still looks nice, and I think if only we notice it, the fact that maybe the big green monster you throw biscuits at on the table, he's not quite as round and curvy as he is on PC, but we also have to think about audiences of Quest. Many of them won't have played the PC version. But at the same time, we wanted to thank those people who have played on PC and supported us with that version by enabling crossbuy, so if they have got a Quest, they can get it on day one, but also it helps to make sure we've got a pool of players ready to play against on launch.
And as a studio, you guys are focused on a lot of kind of like B2B and client work. You've done some really cool projects over the past, well, since Loco Dojo is released for various clients. Has it been strange to kind of return back to the gaming side since then? Because obviously that, I think I'm right in saying that side's been kind of dormant for the past few years while you focus on those other projects, right?
If we're talking about, pure consumer gaming products, then yeah, sure. But we've been doing a lot of work in LBE, so we've still been creating a lot of gaming experiences and versions of Loco Dojo. I was going to say last year, but not last year. Year before, we created Loco Dojo Fiesta, which was an exclusive for Alterize in Belgium, an LBE experience, who wanted a quicker version that was 15 minutes rather than the version that people were playing based on the PC version in LBE from Steam Cyber Cafe or Springboard or other arcade platforms, where it could go up to 50 minutes or an hour. But a lot of our, even though it's enterprise training, a lot of what we learned from creating Radial G about comfort, and what we learned from Loco Dojo in terms of input and using touch and how input in VR works, we incorporate that into our training experiences, and a lot of our training is gamified. So there are a number of experiences we've been creating where, okay, they're not 100% pure fun like Loco Dojo, and we probably couldn't get away with asking people in Lloyd's Bank to milk a pig with piglets, but we can certainly incorporate elements of that gamified experience and narrative to make learning more enjoyable, which ultimately our studio moniker is Serious Fun to reflect that.
With the way the studio has been progressing over the past 4 or 5 years, that you've had this version on PC and you've done those arcade versions, and I remember you've spoke a couple of times over the years about how actually there's been a lot of opportunity for the game in the arcade market, and then adding on the client work and the enterprise stuff that, like you said, you've gamified as well. What's your overall take on where the industry is at the moment? Because you're someone that has worked in it for a long time now, going back to, I want to pronounce the studio's name right. It was Tamika Games, right? With Radial G, which was obviously a launch title on a lot of different headsets, and had a long life. That was a commitment that you and that team made back in 2013, 2014 kind of time now. And so we're getting on for nearly kind of 10 years on from that spot, crazily. Are you where we thought we'd be right now, or where do you think we are in the industry? Are you encouraged, or do you think there are challenges ahead?
The Quest has been, a wonderful opportunity for a lot of studios who are focused on games, and has provided a much larger, streamlined device audience to target and work for. Obviously, there's how you get your content onto Quest is, there's 3 options essentially with SideQuest and App Lab and then Store. There is an element of the sort of discoverability, but also exploration that's kind of faded away, I think, just because the the funding just generally isn't there to support
Mm.
VR gaming wholly. But you have to look at the number of successful titles that we've got on Quest, those who are making over $1 million or multi-million dollars, not just in their a year, some of them within months, within a month, within a week of launch. And I think it's very, very positive overall for the industry. And I think we never really did that many predictions, just because there was a lot of analysts out there who were making wild predictions at the start of the year, and then would say, "Oh, it's dead," because they didn't come true by the end of the year. But we've seen, enterprise adoption. We see a lot of consumer adoption happening in enterprise. So when we're deploying hundreds of headsets into, Vodafone or Severn Trent or Lloyd's, for example, they're getting great use out of that for training. But quite often, the people who are doing the training and trying out a Quest for the first time, they're like, "What else can we do with it?" Like, well, here's Loco Dojo. We can show you that. But then, here's a video of Beat Saber or whatever. And, quite often they're straight on their phones going to Argus or Amazon or, other online retailers and ordering one or more devices to have delivered to home the next day. So there's like a massive driver for home use through enterprise and through work. But I think it's still a very risky business. The games industry has always been very risky. It's become more risk averse on all the other platforms, and I don't think VR is any different, especially when we're still talking about majoritively still quite small marketplaces in terms of overall user bases. So for us, our approach has always been focused more on what we see as the relatively safe, stable, profitable work in terms of the agency and the enterprise work for hire side of things, but then taking that to build the prototypes that allow us to explore, to look for funding or self-fund our own experiences, like Radial G, like Loco Dojo, and then take those learnings and feed it back onto our enterprise work, and then the cycle starts again, essentially. But yeah, I would like to see bigger IPs and bigger names getting involved, and I think they are coming on board. But you always have to ask yourself, no matter what you're doing with VR, is why VR? It can't just be a big name. That big name isn't going to magically make loads of people want to get involved with VR. It has to be a big name with a great experience.
Yeah, and I suppose that does bring it back round to Loco Dojo, which is a game, right, that is every mini game within it is designed to do something different in VR, whether it's you're firing a turret or you're swinging nunchucks or something like that. And that must have taken, all those years ago, it must have taken a lot of time to prototype, come up with. And I think that's really impressive that you came up with, you were saying 16 games in the main.
I mean, those are the ones that made it to the final cut.
Well, exactly, right. And I think it's impressive to have 16 different, like, almost fast fire examples of like the different types of interactions you can do in VR, because this is an experience where so much of what we do just boils down to that in VR. If you can't see, I'm trying to imitate holding a gun. And this, like we're saying, this is 16 fast fire examples of different things you can do, which I think is really cool. Wrapping up, so what is next for you guys at Make Real then? You mentioned post-launch updates for the game. Is there going to be any post-launch content? Are there any new games planned? Anything along those lines you can tell us?
I mean, we have a lot of plans, and we've had a box of post-it notes of the next mini game ideas that have been sat there since 2017. But ultimately, it's that balance of defining how successful we are at launch and what the revenue is in terms of what we can then safely spend to work on further content. So it's not like, please go and buy it, but at the same time, it's the more successful it is, the more we can do with it, and the easier it is for me to make sure I've got that buy-in internally to do that. But we've got many ideas, and as you said, you alluded to the 16 games of what we can do with different ways of touch. But again, that was 4 years ago, and that was very early touch stuff. We've now got hand tracking. We've done a lot of other things with touch. There's still a whole load of new interactions and mechanisms that we are keen to explore. And there's certainly other modes that we're keen to look at. I would like to get it to a certain level. I mean, we've got ideas, we've got different themes for the board at the moment. I'd like to see different themes influencing different new mini games, whether it's a whole new board you flip over, or segments you can choose which ones, and the path generates based upon which segments you have. But also I'd like to get it to the stage where other VR games want to work with us, and then we can look at maybe having VR virtual versions of their games as mini games in our games in a meta board. So there's multiple options, but ultimately we just want to carry on making sure that it's a game that represents us as a studio and what we stand in terms of VR having a positive impact on people, that they have a sense of fun and camaraderie playing in a not too serious competitive way. And it's difficult for us as a studio. We couldn't suddenly turn around and do a super gory horror game or a game involving shooting people, because it just doesn't really fit in with the rest of our ethos and what we want to do with VR. So it's building upon this, and if we can find more reasons to get Brian Blessed back into the studio to do more VO recording, then that works for me. So
yeah, and that is something we didn't mention in the interview, but is a really, really fantastic feature of this game, and something that's really, really enjoyable to return to the board and just hear Brian's voice is always a delight. Sam, so moving into 2022, seeing as we're kind of coming up to the end of the year here, and looking again at that wider industry angle, what are you personally going to be interested in VR for the next couple of months, for the next 12 months? And yeah, hardware launches, things you want to see in software. What are you going to be looking out for personally?
I'm going to be looking out for making sure that as these devices get better and they track more, to make sure that the users have more awareness and control over where their data's going and how it's being used. I would like to see a variety of standalone devices. We have rumors of a Quest Pro. We have rumors of a Index or a Valve Decard standalone device. We don't know fully what a PSVR 2 is going to look like yet. What is the Vive Flow? Is that going to be like the Nreal Air glasses, just like a media player, or is it going to be something a bit more positionally aware? Is it going to be more like their Photon concept? It's always exciting because there's always new hardware around the corner, and part of my job is making sure that we have access to that. It was interesting during lockdown having to go through those extra legal hoops to get access to like Quest 2 dev kits at home, etc. But ultimately, it's just seeing that user base grow and more people getting on board, more and more people trying VR, and seeing what new audiences and what new experiences emerge from that.
Cool. Right. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us in the studio today. Loco Dojo is out on Oculus Quest. Loco Dojo Unleashed, I should say, is out on Oculus Quest on Thursday, the 7th of October, at the usual Oculus Quest store drop time of 10 a.m. PT and all that. Sam, thanks so much for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great to be here.
Cool. And yeah, catch us with more content coming up on UploadVR.com.